We should teach the American people you're supposed to meet your obligations, not run from them. So because you have a mortgage doesn't mean you should run away if it goes down. People live there for a long time. Their families are in schools. And so, and a lot of people are a little bit underwater. They're paying. There's only a portion of the people underwater who are not paying.
That was J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon in my exclusive interview with him yesterday. He supports President Obama's housing plan, saying it'll help homeowners. But will the plan resolve the housing crisis and stem foreclosures as promised? Here to weigh in is John Berlau, director at the Center for Entrepreneurship, and Andrew Jacobowitz from the Center for American Progress. John, Dimon was pretty clear there. He did not want to reduce the principal. Took a couple times to get that out of him. But do you think that's going to work? The plan's going to work?
No, I have a lot of issues. I'm at the Center for Entrepreneurship, Melissa, at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and thanks for having me on. I don't think, because the redefault rates for similar modifications that were encouraged that were higher than 50% after 6 months. So I think a lot of, there's a lot we could do with $75 billion opportunity costs. It may not be the best thing for people to stay in their homes if there are job opportunities elsewhere, and this $75 billion could be better used for things like moving expenses and other things, rather than trying to prevent the inevitable foreclosure and keeping people in their homes at all costs.
Or abolish capital gains and dividends and lower the corporate tax rate, John, for a real economic growth plan that'll raise asset values across the board. Andrew, let me come to you. Besides Jamie Dimon's important question about preserving the principal, which, by the way, is stuck in the various asset-backed, mortgage-backed securities that are so toxic, what about this bankruptcy cramdown? This is a killer. This violates contracts. This takes recourse away from lenders. This undermines asset values, and it's going to wind up raising mortgage rates, is it not?
It will not raise mortgage rates. I mean, that's a misnomer out there that the banking industry likes to toss around. There's some good academic research that indicates that in places that have implemented restrictions that would eliminate the restrictions on modifying those mortgages, that in fact mortgage rates don't go up.
Wait,
if you already have a mortgage that's not paying, whether it's not paying and being restructured in bankruptcy so that can be sustained, or you're losing a ton of money by proceeding to foreclosure, at the end of the day, that's the identical risk in terms of non-payment that you're facing.
I don't understand this, John. John Berlau, take me through this. Andrew says certain places have employed this successfully. Where are these places, John?
I don't know. There is a limited amount of data, and you can look at other things like cram-downs in agriculture, farm loans, things like that, where they have raised rates. And so it's not, but it would be an abrogation of contracts is always a bad thing. And plus the investors holding these, the banks don't hold these, getting the fees from this. It's investors, including pension and mutual funds, and it might just lead to a further credit tightening and and I would say raised rates.
Andrew, there's a lot of outrage out there this morning from people saying, I'm going to pay my mortgage, I've been paying my mortgage, even if I'm underwater, and now I'm going to pay the guy's mortgage down the street. How is Washington going to deal with that over time?
So the truth is that if you have a Fannie and Freddie mortgage, it allows you to refinance. There's a smaller segment of the population that is potentially underwater, where they're going to reduce interest rates down to 31% of income, so the loan can be sustained. One of the problems with that 50% redefault rate that was tossed out earlier in the show is that we don't know what type of modifications were made. In a lot of cases, those types of modifications were simply short-term, 3-month or 6 months deferments of interest.
But
and
Andrew,
things like
what
that.
about the outrage among people who are paying their mortgages, who are now annoyed that the government's going to step in and by that we mean us, pay for people who aren't paying their mortgages?
And their taxes are financing the bailout of the others.
So there are two pieces to that. One is sort of the third piece of the plan, which is to ensure that mortgage capitals continues to flow into the system so that people can refinance through market rates at low interest rates. So the idea of kind of focusing on one piece of this and saying, well, everybody else doesn't get help because the government is providing some direct subsidies in certain instances. In the rest of the cases, most people are able to get low interest rates, fixed rate loans for 30 years. These things exist because the government in the past has stepped in and said homeownership is a priority in this country, and it's important for us to make sure that people understand the payments and have sustainable payments over the long term.
You see, John Berlau, if you listen to Andrew, government this, government that, government this, government that, this continues a long-term trend that the government is nationalizing the housing and mortgage markets. I might add, Wilbur Ross has a great op-ed piece about this in this morning's New York Post. This is all about Fannie and Freddie and the U.S. government. I don't think private capital is going to come in. I don't think free markets are going to flourish on this. And I do think people, as Jamie Dimon said, people who are paying their mortgage despite the fact that they're underwater, they are subsidizing a lot of people who shouldn't get government financing, John.
There has been too much emphasis, Larry, I think, from both Republicans and Democrats over the years on home ownership rather than other aspects of the American dreams. And I think this will just continue this, unfortunately. There are other ways to help people with $75 billion other than, keeping them in a loan that may be, too big for them even at reduced payments.
Why do we need an entitlement? Why must we entitle? If the mortgage was badly written, if the person was not suited for the mortgage, if the down payment, and by the way, this plan may not even check out the income documentation, why are we creating another entitlement? That's what I want to know. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, first of all, the particular program rules haven't been laid out, so to speculate that they're not even going to check income documentation, I think, is off base. But the point is that there are people who are not going to gain assistance under this program. If the degree to which the modification would have to be so severe that it would basically eliminate interest rates, if they would have to drop their interest rate below 2%, you wouldn't qualify.
Okay.
At the end of the day, if foreclosing remains the way to maximize net present value on that mortgage, then foreclosure is warranted. And that's what the guidance being issued is saying.
No,
we got to leave it there.
I agree with that last point.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.